Get your hands off me, you scavenger. The words cut sharper than the desert wind. Tomás Rivas froze mid-step, boots grinding into the dust. Before him, sprawled among jagged rocks and spilled herbs, was an old woman clutching her ankle. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love hearing from you, and always read every message. Her silver braid hung loose, her face red with pain and fury. He raised his palms, voice low. Easy, Senora. I mean no harm. She narrowed her eyes, hard as flint. That's what men always say before they take more than they give. I've seen your kind. Buzzards in hats, circling the weak. Tomas's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. You've twisted that ankle bad. Won't carry you far. I'll crawl home before I let some drifter drag me about like a sack of grain. She pushed against the dirt, wincing, pride refusing to bend. Tomás watched her for a long moment, the sun beating against his back. He could have left her. She invited it. But the thought of her stranded as night fell, coyotes sniffing close, clawed at him. You mistake me, Senora, he said quietly. I'm no buzzard. Just a man who won't leave another for the coyotes. Her laugh was bitter, rasping. And what will you ask in return? A meal? My purse? Gratitude? Tomás stepped closer, shadows long across the rocks. Nothing. Not even thanks. But if you fight me, you'll suffer more than you already are. Her gaze searched his face, torn between fear and pride. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The desert stilled, waiting. At last she spat, voice trembling with anger. Stubborn fool! Tomás bent, sliding his arms beneath her. Perhaps, but I'll be the fool who carries you home. The wagon rattled slow along the dirt road, each turn of the wheel grinding dust into the fading light. Tomás held the reins steady, silent as the horse pulled them toward the valley. Beside him, Doña Elena sat stiff as a board, arms folded, jaw set like stone. You've no right, she muttered, refusing to look at him. Tomás glanced sideways. To what? To carry me off like baggage. A woman has pride, even if her bones fail her. You'd rather lie on that slope until dark? I'd rather keep my dignity than owe a favor to a man I don't trust. Tomás's brow furrowed. Trust doesn't grow in a minute, Senora. But neither does respect. You wound me with your words when I've given nothing but help. Her lips pressed tight. Help never comes free. Before Tomás could reply, laughter rang out ahead. 3 young women strolled back from town, their skirts bright, their baskets swinging. Spotting the wagon, their eyes lit with mischief. Well, would you look at that? One called, voice dripping sweet poison. Tomás has himself a passenger. The second giggled. And such a fine catch. He's gone blind, hauling grandmothers home instead of courting us. Careful, abuela, the third chimed in. He might trade you for cattle if you limp too slow. Their laughter lingered as they passed, sharp as spurs. Elena's cheeks burned red. She turned on Tomás, her voice sharp. See what you've done? Made me a spectacle, an old fool clinging to a stranger's wagon. Tomás's hands tightened on the reins, but his tone stayed calm. Their words are wind, empty. You give them power only if you care. And you don't? She snapped. His gaze stayed forward, fixed on the fading trail. I've ridden too many miles to let a child's laughter tell me who I am. For the first time, Elena faltered. Her mouth opened, but no words came. The wagon creaked on, carrying silence heavier than stone. The wagon jolted over a rut, rattling Elena against the sideboard. She hissed, clutching her shawl tighter. Can't even drive straight, she muttered. Perhaps I'd have been better left with the rocks. Tomás's grip tightened on the reins. Would you prefer I turn back and set you there again? She gave him a sharp look, her eyes flashing. Don't tempt me, ranchero. Pride may not carry my ankle, but it'll carry me farther than your pity. His jaw set, muscles tense beneath his dust-worn shirt. For miles he had endured her barbs, but the sting of her words gnawed deeper than he let show. You think I want thanks? His voice cut low, rougher than before. You think I hunger for your coin or your favor? I should have left when you spat at me. Lord knows you begged for it. The horse slowed as he drew the reins tighter, the wagon creaking to a halt. For a moment, silence pressed heavy between them, the desert stretching wide and merciless on every side. Elena stiffened, her chin lifting. Then do it. Leave me here. I'll crawl on hands and knees if I must. Better that than suffer your charity another mile. Tomás turned, eyes burning into hers. He almost climbed down, almost let his boots strike the trail and leave her to the coyotes and the creeping dark. His pride screamed for it. But her face betrayed what her tongue would not. The flicker of fear behind her fire, the tremble she tried to hide. His chest rose with a heavy sigh. He loosened the reins, urging the horse forward once more. You call it charity, he said quietly, almost to himself. I call it decency. Believe what you like. But until you're safe, you'll bear my company whether you curse it or not. Elena turned her face toward the horizon, lips pressed thin. She hated his words, but hated more the comfort they brought her. By the time the wagon creaked to a stop, dusk had swallowed the desert. The horizon burned low and red, and the first stars blinked through the smoke-colored sky. Tomás climbed down, stretching the stiffness from his back, and moved to help her. Where are we? Elena asked sharply, clutching her shawl. A way station, he said. Old place. A friend keeps herbs here, men's broken bones for travelers. She frowned, scanning the shadowed hut half buried in sand. Looks more like a coyote den. Tomás ignored the jab and opened the door. Inside, the air smelled of sage and dust. Shelves lined the walls with jars and dried roots. A cot waited near the hearth, thin but clean. Sit, he said, nodding to the cot. I can stand. You can't. I said I can. Her defiance was a worn blade, sharp but trembling. She tried to push herself up, winced, and nearly fell before Tomás caught her. Careful, he muttered. She smacked at his arm. Keep your hands where they belong, stranger. I've buried one husband already. I've no need for another hanging over me. Tomás released her, stepping back, his patience stretching thin again. You've got a tongue like barbed wire, Señora. I start to think you'd rather suffer than be helped. Better that than owe a man anything. He exhaled, turning to gather a basin and cloth. Then think of it as evening the debt between us. You insult me. I patch your ankle. We'll call it fair. Her eyes followed him warily as he knelt to clean her wound, movements gentle but sure. After a long silence, she said, softer, You speak too calmly for a man being insulted. He glanced up, a flicker of dry humor in his eyes. If I got angry every time someone called me a fool, I'd never have peace. Elena huffed, folding her arms. Then you must live a lonely life. Tomás wrung out the cloth, voice quiet. Sometimes peace looks a lot like loneliness. She said nothing more after that. But for the first time, her eyes lingered on him, not in suspicion, but in thought. Dawn cracked the desert open with a pale orange glow. The way station smelled of earth and wood smoke. A kettle hissed softly over the fire. Tomás crouched beside it, his back to her, stirring something that smelled faintly of coffee and sage. Elena stirred under the thin blanket, blinking against the light. Her ankle throbbed, neatly wrapped in clean cloth. For a heartbeat, she forgot where she was. Then she saw him, broad-shouldered, silent, moving with the careful rhythm of someone used to long solitude. You're still here, she said, voice rough with sleep. Tomás didn't turn. You expected I'd leave you in the night? Wouldn't blame you if you had, she muttered. After all the names I called you. He poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it over. You've got fire. Most folks lose that long before the years take their strength. Elena frowned at the compliment, suspicion creeping in. Flattery now? I suppose you think kind words will make me forget being carted off like a stray goat. He smirked faintly. I've learned there's no softening your words, Signora. So no, I don't try. She sipped the coffee, hiding the fact that it warmed her more than she wanted to admit. The silence stretched between them, filled with the chirp of distant sparrows and the slow sigh of wind through the eaves. You live nearby? She asked finally. Tomás hesitated. Far enough. Alone? He nodded once. Figures, she said, eyes narrowing. A man that quiet either hides something or has done something he can't speak of. He looked up, meeting her gaze, steady and unreadable. Maybe both. Her lips parted to retort, but no words came. For a moment, something in his eyes, old grief perhaps, disarmed her anger. Then she looked away, muttering, Still doesn't mean I trust you. Tomás rose, tipping his hat slightly. I'd be worried if you did. And with that, he stepped outside into the sunrise, leaving her to sip her coffee and wonder, for the first time, what kind of man she'd really crossed paths with. The sun climbed higher, spilling gold through the cracks of the old hut. Tomás was outside mending the wagon's harness when the door creaked behind him. Elena hobbled out, leaning on a stick he'd carved from a mesquite branch. You work like the devil owes you money, she said, watching him tighten a leather strap. Tomás wiped his brow with the back of his hand. Work's quieter than talking. Convenient for a man who avoids questions. He looked up, the hint of a grin ghosting his face. You've enough questions for the both of us. She clicked her tongue, irritated by the calm in his voice. You could at least tell me your name, or do you prefer being called Ranchero? Tomás, he said simply. And you, Signora? Elena, she replied, though she said it like a challenge rather than an introduction. Doña Elena Vargas. He nodded once. Then we're even. The wind tugged at the silence between them. She watched him for a moment, noting how he checked the horse's hooves, how steady his hands were. He moved like someone who knew the land, measured, sure, almost too sure. You're no drifter, she said suddenly. You handle things like a man who's used to owning them. Tomás straightened, dusting his hands. You've a sharp eye. And you've a secret, she replied. He didn't deny it, just glanced toward the sun. Maybe. But not all secrets are worth fearing. Elena's mouth twitched. Spoken like a man who's never had his heart broken. Tomás's eyes darkened a little. You'd be surprised, Signora. Her stick tapped against the dirt. She wanted to pry further but stopped herself. For the first time, she wasn't sure if her words could hurt him. Or herself. He nodded toward the cot inside. You should rest that ankle. And let you think you've tamed me? She said, arching an eyebrow. Tomás chuckled under his breath. Not likely. I doubt anyone ever could. Her lips parted, ready to fire back, but the words faltered. Instead, she turned and limped back inside, muttering, At least you're not as dull as you look. Tomás smiled faintly, the sound of her stick tapping fading behind him. For a man used to silence, her presence was noise he didn't mind hearing. The desert noon pressed hot and still against the walls of the way station. Cicadas droned. A single streak of sunlight slanted across the room where Elena sat, darning the tear in her shawl with small, stubborn motions. Tomás worked outside, splitting kindling with smooth, practiced swings. The steady rhythm filled the silence. After a while, Elena spoke through the open doorway. You swing that axe like you're punishing the earth. He didn't look up. Old habit. From what? Running? He paused, mid-swing, glanced at her through the doorway. From remembering. She blinked, caught off guard. You've got a strange way of speaking. Like you're hiding something behind every word. He smiled faintly, setting another log on the stump. and you've got a way of cutting through words until only the wound remains." She frowned at that, then chuckled dryly. "Maybe that's fair. A woman my age doesn't get hurt unless her tongue has teeth." He leaned the axe against the post and stepped closer to the doorway. "You're not what I expected." "Expected?" she scoffed. "You barely know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "You've got more fire than half the young folk in this valley. And more sense, too, though you hide it behind all that temper." Her hands stilled on the fabric. "Careful, Tomás. Sounds too much like flattery again." He shrugged. "Truth doesn't care how it sounds." For a moment, she didn't respond. The cicadas droned on. A soft wind carried dust and the faint scent of mesquite through the doorway. "You talk like a preacher," she muttered finally. "But I've yet to meet a preacher with calluses like yours." He chuckled. "You look too close for someone who claims not to trust me." She gave him a long look, not unkind, but searching. "I don't trust you. But I'm starting to wonder if that says more about me than you." He tipped his hat slightly, then turned back to his work. "Maybe that's a start." The moment hung between them, fragile, wordless, real. And for the first time since they met, the silence that followed didn't feel like a fight waiting to happen. The wind came first, a low moan sweeping over the plain, stirring the dust like restless ghosts. Tomás felt it in his bones before the sky even darkened. He looked up from the corral, the scent of rain sharp in the heat. "Elena," he called through the door. "We've got trouble coming." She peered out, squinting. The sky had turned the color of tarnished brass, clouds rolling like smoke. "It's just wind," she said. He shook his head. "Not just. When the desert starts singing like that, it means it's angry." She huffed. "You talk as if the land's alive." "It is," he said, moving quickly to tie the horse, "and it doesn't care much for talk." Within minutes, the wind rose to a howl. Dust tore through the air, stinging their faces. Tomás slammed the door shut and bolted it, his hat whipping off his head. Elena coughed, covering her mouth with her shawl. "Heavens! It's like the world's ending." Tomás crossed to the small window, pushing a board against it. "You'd better sit down, Doña. These storms bite." She hesitated, then sat, her hands gripping the cot's edge. The storm roared around them, rattling the roof and filling the air with grit. For a while, they said nothing, just the sound of wind and sand battering wood. Then, quieter. "Do you ever get used to this?" she asked. He smiled faintly in the dim light. "You don't get used to a storm. You just learn which way to face." She studied him, his steady hands, his calm voice amid the chaos. Something in her chest shifted. Not trust, not yet, but something close to it. "You're a strange man, Tomás," she murmured. He glanced at her, eyes warm despite the cold wind sneaking through the cracks. "Takes one to recognize another." The storm raged on outside, but inside the way station, for the first time, they didn't feel like strangers waiting for it to pass. They felt like survivors, enduring it together. By morning, the storm had worn itself out, leaving behind a world washed in silence. The desert stretched pale and clean, every cactus crowned with a film of dust. Tomás stepped outside, breathing deep. The air smelled of wet earth, rare and sharp. Inside, Elena folded her blanket with stubborn care. "I suppose you'll want me gone now that the skies stopped trying to kill us." Tomás smiled faintly. "You're the only one here who can talk the sky into giving up." Before she could reply, the distant rumble of hooves broke the calm. Both turned toward the horizon. 3 riders approached, men from the town, their horses kicking up what dust the storm hadn't claimed. "Friends of yours?" Elena asked, suspicion lacing her tone. "Neighbors," he said carefully, "though not the visiting kind." The men reined in near the fence, hats low, eyes sharp. The tallest one, Barlow, the blacksmith, called out, "Tomás! Heard you holed up here through the blow. Thought we'd find you buried." Tomás nodded. "Still standing." Barlow's gaze drifted past him to the doorway, where Elena stood like a general guarding her post. His eyebrows shot up. "And who's this?" "Didn't know you'd taken to rescuing damsels." "Old damsels, apparently," the second man said with a grin. "Careful, Tomás. Folks'll start talking." Laughter followed, dry as the desert. Elena stiffened. Her voice came cold as winter. "If the men of this town spent half as much time working as they do wagging their tongues, maybe the roads would be worth traveling." That shut them up quick. Tomás hid a smirk, then said mildly, "She's got a point." Barlow cleared his throat. "Didn't mean offense, ma'am. Just didn't expect." He trailed off, glancing between them. "Well, you two make an odd sight." Tomás's tone stayed even. "Ain't the first time I've been called odd." Elena turned, limping back inside without another word. Tomás tipped his hat to the riders. "We'll be heading out soon. Tell the town I'm alive if they care." Barlow nodded uncertainly. "You sure she's not trouble?" Tomás's eyes softened, gaze on the closed door. "If she is, I reckon I deserve it." The men exchanged looks, muttered something about old fools and lost causes, then rode off. Tomás lingered in the quiet afterward. Inside, he could hear Elena moving, her voice low, muttering about fools and gossip. But this time, the edge in her tone sounded almost like concern. By the time Tomás and Doña Elena rolled into town 2 days later, their names had already arrived ahead of them, carried on the wind by talkative mouths. The mercantile porch was crowded with townsfolk pretending not to stare. Mrs. Lang, the baker's wife, leaned close to her friend and whispered behind her fan, "Did you hear? That drifter's been shacked up with the Vargas widow out by the way station." Her friend gasped softly. "At her age, saints preserve us." "Age don't stop pride, honey. Some say she's bewitched him. Others say he's got his eyes on her land across the street." 2 young women, the same ones who'd mocked him days before, giggled as they watched the wagon pass. "See," one of them said, "he's still carting her around. Maybe he's blind and desperate," the other smirked. "Or maybe he likes 'em seasoned." Their laughter cut through the air like burrs. Elena heard it and straightened in her seat, chin high though her face burned. Tomás said nothing, guiding the horse forward, but his jaw clenched tight enough to crack a stone. At the general store, old Mr. Reddick waved half-heartedly. "Tomás," he said, voice too friendly to be honest, "I was beginning to think you'd settled down. Folks been wondering where you two disappeared to." Elena shot him a glare sharp enough to split timber. "Tell those folks to wonder about their own lives." Tomás helped her down from the wagon. "That's enough talk for one day," he murmured. But the whispers kept following them, curling behind doors, hiding under laughter. Words like odd, shameful, and strange pair clung to them like dust. That night, as they made camp outside town, Elena sat by the fire, silent. Finally, she said, "They make me feel like I've done wrong for simply needing help." Tomás stirred the coals, eyes steady on the flames. "Let them talk. Truth's louder, just takes longer to be heard." She looked at him, truly looked this time, and for once didn't have an insult ready. The fire burned low, its glow flickering against their tired faces. Beyond the camp, the desert was quiet. No wind, no whispers, only the steady rhythm of night. Tomás sat staring into the flames, his hat resting on his knee. He'd been silent for a long while, long enough for Elena to know something was shifting inside him. "You've been chewing on words, Tomás," she said softly. "Spit them out before they choke you." He looked up, eyes shadowed by the firelight. "Tomorrow, I'll take you back to town. After that, I'll ride north." Her needle stilled mid-stitch. "North?" He nodded. "Seems the talking won't stop till I'm gone. You don't deserve the shame they're painting on you." She frowned, voice sharp. "You think I care what they say?" "You do," he said gently. "You shouldn't have to. But I won't be the reason your name gets dragged through dust." Elena's throat tightened. "So that's it?" You ride off like a ghost and leave me to my empty house?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "It'd be easier if I didn't care so damn much." The words hung there, raw and unguarded. She stared at him. The man who'd carried her, fought her temper, faced a storm beside her. And for once, she saw no calm or distance, only truth. "Tomás," her voice cracked. "You fool of a man. You think I asked for this heartache? I tried to hate you because it was easier than feeling alive again." He met her gaze, steady and tender. "You could do better than a tired rancher." She gave a trembling laugh. "And you could find someone young enough to make the town happy. But here we are, two stubborn souls too old to pretend we don't need each other." He reached for her hand. She let him. The night around them stretched vast and endless, but for the first time, neither of them felt alone in it. The morning broke soft over the valley, the sun painting the hills in shades of copper and gold. Tomás guided the wagon down a narrow trail Elena didn't recognize. The air smelled of dew and juniper. "Where are we going?" she asked, though her tone carried more curiosity than suspicion now. "You'll see," he said with a small smile. As they rounded a bend, the land opened wide, a sea of grass rolling to the horizon. Fences gleamed silver in the dawn, horses grazing near a great white ranch house that caught the light like a beacon. Elena's breath caught. This is yours?" Tomás nodded quietly. "Hidden Valley Ranch. My father built it. After he passed, I couldn't stand the weight of it. Too many ghosts. So I left, rode out, tried to live like a man with nothing. Thought I'd buried myself far from all this." She turned to him, eyes wide. "You let people think you were just another drifter." He smiled faintly. "Easier that way. Folks treat you honest when they think you've got nothing to give." She looked out across the fields, voice softer now. "And now?" Tomás took her hand, calloused and gentle. "Now I've got something worth giving again. Didn't believe I'd ever find that. Not after all the years. Not after losing what I did." Elena's eyes glistened in the morning light. "You think this old heart can keep up with a man like you?" He chuckled, squeezing her hand. "It's your fire that found me, Doña. I'd follow it anywhere." For a long moment they sat in silence, watching the wind move across the grass. The world felt vast again. Not empty, but alive. Elena smiled, tears tracing the edges of her pride. Then maybe Tomás Rivas, the richest man in the territory, isn't rich enough to buy what he's got now. He laughed softly, leaning closer. "No, this I had to earn." And as the morning sun rose over the ranch that had waited for him all those lonely years, two hearts long guarded finally found their home. Not in the land, but in each other. Thanks for riding with us, friends. If you want more Western love stories, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.